nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I don't see any non-staff visitors other than students. Is there any public comment tonight? Okay, hearing none, we can move right to the consent agenda. Are there any additions or corrections or questions to any item on the consent agenda? Hearing none, could I have a motion then to approve it, please?
So moved.
Is there a second, Jerry? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Correspondence, most of that will be dealt with by the softball committee, and there's an administrative item about meetings. So I think we can go right to the superintendent's report.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. We're going to start tonight with our annual state summative assessment report, which Craig does the bulk of, but I wanted to provide some introductory comments. You might recall that there was no science test this past spring due to the move to a new assessment, so you'll hear about English and language arts across grades 3 through 8, and then obviously a brief report on SAT with a much deeper dive at next month's meeting. You might recall from last year's meeting, there's definitely some shifts in the way data is being reported by the state to us. We spent a lot of time last year talking about the growth metrics. Really now we're being measured against ourselves. State set targets. And really focusing on our ability to get each individual child to show growth, even if they met standard. I'm extremely proud of our staff, administration, and students, as you will see in the data tonight. While we know this is only one measure of our progress, it is an important one. The number of students meeting and exceeding standard is the highest Waterford has had on SBAC over the 4 years of the administration, and this is certainly something to be celebrated. Math has increased 3.4% across grades 3 through 8, and is up 13.8% over the last 3 testing cycles. To put that into perspective, in mathematics over the last several years, we have 160 more students meeting or exceeding standard than 3 years ago. While state growth metrics in math were flat, Waterford saw gains of 4.2%. In English language arts, while not at the same level of math, achievement is up 2.6% in grades 3 through 8. The grades 5 through 7 cohort in ELA and grades 6 through 8 cohort in ELA saw sizable gains. All grades 3 through 8 met state-set vertical scale score targets, and growth metrics are up 4.8% in ELA over the last year. While there's plenty of good news to be celebrated, we are also very cognizant of the areas that we need to continue to develop further. We still want every cohort to show growth, whether it be year over year, 3-year, 4-year, or 5-year as the test progresses. And we're not seeing that same consistency from each and every cohort. We want all students, even students performing at or above standard, to continue to grow. Students meeting or exceeding standard can improve and should improve. We are analyzing grade level data to determine why some grade levels achieved higher than others. Every level of our district, from central office, our district data team, our administrative team, school leadership teams, and PLCs, as well as individual teachers, are engaged in this very work. And as you heard last spring, we continue to use MAP to assess our students in an ongoing manner to adjust instruction. Craig is going to provide a comprehensive overview, as he always does, of the data, and more importantly, our response to that data. Again, commend our team and our students on their hard work that has resulted in what you will see tonight. Our work is never done, and we continue to focus on getting all students to learn at high levels. I want to thank Craig for the deep dive he does each year in putting this report together, but more importantly, I continue to applaud the work he does in guiding the team in the use of the data, which you will also hear about tonight. Mr. Bowers?
So last year did kind of like a
really deep overview on the two metric systems, but I just wanted to remind the board that, as you can see, really we're looking at two measures, growth and achievement. So when we talk about achievement or proficiency, it's really a one-time snapshot on academic performance in a subject like ELA or math. And so achievement data is usually collected and we look at grade levels over time, but it's different groups of kids, or we can look at achievement from cohorts of kids as one measure. Growth, on the other hand, is about the change in the achievement scores from the same student over time. And this is where, as Tom referred to, we're striving to make sure that students are growing annually. And you can see in some of the data that we still have some work to do on this, but that's where we're focusing the district. So we talk about measures of growth. Tom said that every year the students basically have their own growth target, and we're seeing if they can meet their growth target. And if they do, that's great. And if they meet it by some percent, that also counts. So all achievement, all movement and growth counts in this assessment to see the overall picture of life. So the executive summary, as such, the takeaways are, you can see in the first box that the achievement in DLA has increased by 2.6 percentage points from the year before. The achievement in math has jumped 3.4 percentage points from the year before. For the second year in a row, we're seeing sizable math achievement as increased as a measure of standards. When we talk about English language arts, there's a 4.9% increase over the year before, and for math growth, there's a 4.2% increase. And over the last 3 years, the district, as a district, the students have improved in math 5.7 percentage points. So, again, while we may not be where we want to be for math, we're moving forward in the right direction. Some of these points Tom mentioned in his remarks, where you can see the notables for what we're proud of. For math first. So 13.8% of achievement over the last 3 years. Mentioned that's more than 160 students meeting standard today than before. 10 of the 12 classes throughout all the schools, grades 3 through 8, they met their vertical scale school target. We'll go in a deeper dive in a little bit on that. And when we look at the average percent of target achieved, it's up 4.2% since 2016. When we look at English language arts, grades 5 to 7 and 6 to 8 cohorts show sizable gains. All grades 3 through 8 met their vertical scale score target. And the average target achieved is up 4.8% from the 2016-17 school year. Briefly touch upon SAT tonight. We know that our Director of School Counseling will be doing a deeper dive into this in the November meeting, but some takeaways. Obviously, Waterford is outperforming the state averages for both ELA and math. In the average math, SAT score is up 15 points over last year, and 8.8% increase in the students meeting or exceeding targets in math. But, with that being said, there are still some things that we have to grow. So, we still want to move kids that aren't in that MET category to the MET, and we still want to push kids as far as they can go. So, from the MET target to the higher MET or exceed. For SAT, again, continue moving kids forward in ELA and math achievement. The average ELA SAT score remains relatively flat. Around 75% of the students are meeting or exceeding the target, while I'm sure this is set on like a time thing, so while that's good, we never just rest upon that. We're looking to increase over time. So, we're going to kind of take a higher view and go down to a more granular level in ELA. We can see here with the 4 years of administering the test, this is, as Tom mentioned, our highest achieving year for the amount of students in that kind of 3-4 band combined. And we're up over last year by 2.2 percentage points.
Greg, could I ask a question?
Of course.
What's the margin of error?
When we look at, when you say the margin of error for
Based on real scores. Those are real scores, so there's no margin of error in there?
No, those are just how many kids actually are in the net. So there's margin of error in the test, but
fluctuations of just a couple of points
right.
is margin.
It is, which is why I said ELA performance is relatively flat.
Yeah.
As a district, we've been really focusing on math a lot more. With that being said, we're still doing great work in ELA, but you're right. The 2% is small in nature, but still moving forward. See if this is the right. Okay. So this is comparing how we do compared to the state. You will see in each of the 6 grades, Waterford are outperforming the state. The range of outperformance between 8.2 and 7.5, and an average of about 13.6%. So again, we're in a good spot compared to the state. Now, that's the achievement scores. So this, now we're looking at, is the growth rate. And when we look at the growth rate, we talk about the growth rate itself as the students who met their target 100%. And then the average percent of target achieved is if they didn't meet their growth target 100%, how much of the target did they meet?
So the state looks at an individual student and says, this is how Tom did on the test last year, this is how he should do on this year's test. And it's a binary decision, either yes or no.
So The gap last year between Waterford and the state was 3.5, and in the average target achieved in this year it's 1.4. And the gap last year between Waterford and the state in growth was 1, and this year we exceeded the state by 0.4. So, again, moving forward, we're closing the achievement gap. As we look at achievement data, you'll note in your report that grade 6, we had Clark Lane in the low Met band instead of the high Met band. The diligent board member brought that error to my attention, so thank you. As you can see, though, all grades 3 through 8 are outperforming the state, and in the met or exceeded band, for the first time ever, we actually have at least a grade level in the exceeded band. So, moving in the right direction.
Could we just clarify, Clark Lane at 2598 should be in 6?
Correct.
For 6th grade low?
Yeah. Instead of 6th grade low, it should be...
Right up there you have it as high, but for 6th grade it should be...
No, in your report it's in low, and it should be in high.
In your report, it was reported in the low. For ELA, it should be in the high. For math, you'll also see a change.
There were 2 errors.
Okay.
So
this is correct, the handout, but not the report.
that is...
Gotcha.
Yes. It was an error in the first part of the report. The handout and this presentation...
Are correct.
Yes.
Thank you.
I just do want to take the time to basically attribute that the district literacy, especially readers and writers workshop, I feel adds to this measure of achievement, and certainly the job-embedded professional learning of our literacy instructional coaches, large part to keep us in this met and achieved band with striving in the exceed. This next view is a matched cohort, so that means the same kids over time as we look at the percent of kids in that level 3 or 4 combined category. While the 3-year grade 15 over 16 grade 3 compared to the 17, 18 grade 5 shows a decline, you'll note that the 4th to 5th did rebound nicely from the previous year by gaining nearly 5%. The 15-16 grade 4 compared to the 17-18 grade 6 also shows a decline, but our middle school has shown a good gain.
You gotta go back.
Manage this because I can't even watch it on autopilot. The 2015-16 grade 5 compared to the 17-18 grade 7 increased by 4.9, and the 2015 grade 6 compared to the 2017 grade 8 also showed an increase by 4.1%. As a district, we've had the district data analysis team look at the various levels of target achieved, and we've engaged in an in-depth discussion at that district level with teachers and principals involved in that committee, and we're really trying to focus on the students making the least amount of gain and why, and that then was brought the principals and the teacher members of that district data analysis team then worked at the school level, and at the school we're doing kid-by-kid analysis at that level. So that's kind of the ELA standpoint. Shifting gears, we're going to do the same kind of process for math. So you'll see the district math achievement for the past 4 years. And if we look at the combined scores from level 3 to 4, you'll see that really from the 14-15 school year to the 17-18 school year, we've really grown 13.8 percentage points in that met or exceed band, and that, I think, is statistically significant, the amount of growth that the district has seen.
I think what excites me about that data is you're seeing the growth in the exceed band, right? If you look at meets, that's relatively flat. Obviously, there's level 1 and 2 kids pushing up, but we're really looking at the data and seeing we're pushing kids from that net to exceed, which I think is exciting. To see where that's where the growth is occurring.
As we compare to the state, see that each of the 6th grade tested, Waterford has outperformed the state with a range of only 0.2, but is graded at 16.7, with an average of about 9.9. So, there are some grade levels that we have a little more work on than others, but in general, we're moving forward.
That wasn't the case last year. We had grade levels that did not beat state average last year.
That is correct.
Well, I don't think we should, grade 7 is just about at state average.
Agreed.
So,
and that has been brought up at the middle school. Middle school is doing a very good guidance to that. And when we look at, when the middle school is looking at that as an 8th grade team, they're looking at it kid by kid, and then trying to think of many different ways to try to improve that. So as we've phased in math over time, this is a grade that still has much more work to do.
plus the grade 8 for this year's data, last year's data, also went down in your cohort study. So something's happening in 7th and 8th grade, not just 7th, but 7th and 8th grade.
Correct.
Yeah, the 8th grade cohort is down.
Down too.
0.6%.
Yeah.
Again, you're talking 3-4 students.
Yeah, that's pretty flat.
It is. One of the major changes, as noted in the report, that we're doing in math is that we're piloting a new instructional resource, 6th, 7th, and 8th. We looked at a myriad of resources. We compared them to Ed Reports, which is a nonpartisan best practice, a national clearinghouse. The resource we picked, open source, illustrative math, rated perfect in that report for grades 6 through 8. We've done secondary principal walkthrough of the middle school with all high school and middle school administrators, central office administrators. We've seen a stark, consistent improvement of how math is being delivered in the middle school. So it will be interesting to see if this has some academic return on investment next year.
And I think we'll hopefully see some indications in this year's math scores.
How is it different? Well, so in the past, just without getting too deep in the weeds, Craig, in the past, teachers followed the curriculum, but in very different ways. And we have much more of a unified approach now throughout the whole math department, because some of the practices weren't best practices, and we want to make every teacher have best practice.
How many 6th, 7th, and 8th graders by grade, roughly?
About 200.
206, 207,
About.
208?
Might be 180.
Okay.
About.
Okay. So this then is looking at, again, the growth over time, so the growth rate and target achieved. And so the gap between Waterford and the state was 3.7 at the average target achieved, and this year we've exceeded the state by 0.3. So again, good gains. The gap last year between Waterford and the state in the growth rate was 3.9. And this year we exceeded the state by 0.3. So by both measures, we've seen some significant growth in math, and we're finally outpacing the state average, and I know we have some more work to go. Next slide is on the math achievement. You'll note in your original report that for 7th grade, Clark Lane was in the low net. Actually, if you look at the number, they're in the high approaching. So in the PowerPoint, it's correct. So you will see that we have 2 grade levels, not where we want them to be, but 10 of the 12 are in that area, and 3 of them are in that high net. So, our focus of math is working. Last year, you'll remember that the entire middle school was in the approaching band, as well as many of the 5th grade, and now we've moved the majority up a band. This is looking at the matched cohorts, so the same students, performance on achieving at that 3 and 4 band. Well, the 3-year cohort for the 15-16 grade 3 compared to the 17-18 grade 5 shows a decline. The 15-16 grade 4, as is the 15-16 grade 4 to the 17-18 grade 6, the 5th to 6th and 6th to 8th did show great gains, and we should note that grades 4 and 5 cohort did make a jump, so we're moving in the right direction. And we'll note on the bottom of the slide is what I was talking about the change of resource that we're piloting, and we're going to see, and if this pilot seems to be, as the initial impressions are, successful, we'll be bringing that instructional resource to the Board of Ed for formal adoption this spring.
I think one of the questions that school leadership teams are really asking themselves as they dig into this data when looking at cohorts is, what's the cause for the seesaw effect? You've got kids here, they dip down, then they come back up. Other kids are down, they go up, and then back down. So while aggregate-wise we're seeing great growth, we still have cohorts that are seesawing, and that's really one of the things that we're really digging into, and school leadership teams, especially at the elementary school, really asking themselves, what we're asking ourselves is why is that? Kids didn't become less smart year over year or more smart year over year, so what's the cause for that?
And so that really,
I was just going to ask, was math being taught the same way in 15-16 as it's being taught in 17-18? See, it's crazy math. I don't understand. I mean, I would be an ace in math. I would flunk, I think, if I had it for that. And I think, the students, if they're taught, their foundation is different than what is on the test. I can understand.
Shouldn't be.
But it's going to take, it takes time.
It's different.
Yeah.
I know, but it shouldn't be different than what's on the test. That's always been my concern about curriculum and teaching methods.
And that's
shouldn't be different than what's on the test.
But if they don't have the foundation, or if they weren't taught...
Right, there is a catch-up, but we've been talking about catch-up for a couple of years. Eventually, catch-up for curriculum stuff needs to go away.
Is the illustrative math, is that a computer program?
it is not.
Thank God.
So it is a fairly set lesson plan.
Are we training the teachers in it?
We are.
Okay.
Our math coach is in every single math teacher's classroom 1 period a day, so we can get to every single teacher. co-teaching, co-planning, really unpacking this resource. The team of teachers looked at 4 resource groups last year to say what we're going to pick. Our math coach really did a deep dive, wanted to know what the focus was on how to really then teach our teachers about this. This is why we're still in a pilot phase. That's why we're thinking it's a more uniform approach, marrying to the assessment well, best practice strategy. I will say, to Tom's point about how we're looking at this, on page 27 of your actual report for a moment, which is in the appendix, it's Appendix F. I just want to bring to your attention, this is the work that we're doing at the district and school level, is when we're reporting average percent target achieved, we're boiling the numbers in the 0 to 25 to 75 to 99 is one number. But when you actually break it out by quartiles, we're really looking at that lowest quartile, the 0 to 25. Why are those students, one teacher at the middle school said, these are the coasters who sort of coast along and just kind of maybe do the least that they can do. And why are they not really making a lot of growth on their target? And it's that work that we're doing at the student by student level across each school to see how do we have to engage these students, because if they're not making at least 25% of their target, they're actually moving
backwards, and that would be your slip.
The slippage that Tom is inferring that really you can kind of see illustrated on page 27 more, that really is a district we're focusing in on this year.
And the kids in that band, it'd be easy to say, oh, those are low-achieving students. That could be a MET student who didn't meet their target for the next year, so now they might be a low MET. So we're not just focusing on the kids who didn't meet or exceeds. We're looking at even meets and exceeds students and saying, how come they didn't move forward at the expected rate we would expect them to?
That could be a bucket 1 or 2 kids.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. On the achievement, yeah.
I mean, just in general, what happened? Because I mean, just throughout all of this, you can see that there's that getting that 1 year growth like almost everybody.
And that's consistent statewide. That's consistent with statewide data for last year.
There was any difference there?
I mean, certainly we've made curricular adjustments and things like that, but I don't know if it was.
It just seems weird that year, kind of ripping through everything.
Right.
So I want to now move to overview of the SAT.
And again, you're going to get a much deeper dive next month.
Craig, can I just ask a quick question first? So with the comparison against the state numbers, when you see an anomaly like that with the math, do you have access to our peer district numbers?
Those are on my list.
And do you see that? Because, not all math is, math is not math. I mean, it could be the year of what they're teaching that year. That age group of kids are just don't get that, right? So exactly. So do you see consistency in those anomalies across our peer districts, as not just the state?
Yeah. So in a Friday note in September, I forget the exact week, sent the board comparative data of the region.
I have it here, if you want.
Okay, but just, so, we do look at the region. We do look at that. I do,
But you have access to those numbers. It's
Yeah.
not like you can just compare the state. Okay.
Correct. And then, if someone's really outperforming us, I call up my counterpart.
Yeah, okay, good.
What are you doing as far as instructional approaches? What are you doing for curricular resources?
Yeah, they could have a different curriculum.
Can we learn from you? So that is going on.
Okay, great, thank you.
So for the SAT, we continue to exceed the state, and we're showing an approximate 11 percentage point gain in both academic areas. The message for this slide, as you can see, the whole state is still struggling with math. This is not solely a Waterford issue. As we look at the SAT over time, and it's only been a state summative test for the third year now. You'll see that in math, the percentage of students in the meter exceed is up over 10% over the 3 years, with an average score up 12 points. And in ELA, the number of students in meter exceeds is relatively flat for both the score and the percent. We look at English language arts. The average SAT English language arts score is up from last year 3 points. Waterford students are performing above the state average. And I will have you note that if we look at the level 1, the not net, we're statistically significantly lower than the state. So while we might have 73% in the meter exceed, with less than 10% in the really intervention data.
And that's the only grade level that managed to do less than 10%.
I want to see the cohort data.
Which I would like to see.
That's what I meant.
I mean, everybody would like to see that. That should be the goal. To have less than 10% in that red zone.
Right?
Yeah.
So like this.
You look at math?
Good. That's fine.
No. The average math score is up 23 points above the state. Waterford students are performing above the state. And again, the not net, while we're not below the 10%, we are statistically significantly below the state in that. So, presented a lot of information, a lot of data. What are we doing? You'll see in the report there's extensive pages that goes on. I just wanted to highlight a few. We've talked about, if we think about the strategic plan, goals on assessment are being worked on through the district data analysis team. We beginning with a focus on student work and assessment protocols that this team has set, and then each building principal is reinforced that that's the protocol to look at student work for the PLC level when we go through the cycle of how we're going to analyze student work when it comes up timely at the PLC level. Data analysis on achievement, growth cohort, average percent of target achieved in SAT. I had mentioned we've looked at deeply through the DAC team, which is the District Data Analysis and Action Team, and then that information was then brought back to every school leadership team to present to their faculty. The elementary levels have met and discussed the data in groups, independently reviewed it, have noted what they need to change to raise the scores, and they've incorporated it into their school growth plans. Every school has school growth plans, which the board will be seeing in an upcoming meeting. At the middle school, this data was shared with all teachers in the core disciplines and by the curriculum leaders and the math coaches. They looked at their rosters kid by kid to see how the students did on the Smarter Balance assessment as well as the math assessment. The building administrator conducted a full faculty meeting. I was actually in attendance for that faculty meeting, where they reviewed the test data with all teachers. We looked at the strengths, the weaknesses, and began to discuss some implications. Every team met in a subsequent TLC to do a deeper dive, and then that's going to be shared out at another faculty meeting. So it's how are we looking at the data to drive instruction is now visibly apparent to the schools. There's much more detailed information on next steps in your report, but to conclude, as a whole, we're performing well on the State Summit assessment. Math is up significantly. Real-time math and moving forward. Really, it's a continued dedication from our whole team to do this. And with the strategic plan strategies implemented through the DAT team, then led by each school principal's school leadership team, we're driving teams of teachers to look at this information to drive instruction through the PLC work more than ever before. So, all in all, if there's any other questions?
Marcia.
First, Craig, I'd like to commend you. It must have taken you forever to do all of that. But I do think it was a little cumbersome. It took me a long time to go through it all. And I think it is not efficient to lump all the grades 3 through 8 together. We want a real picture. We don't want just a pretty picture. And what it does is dilutes the whole thing, and it doesn't get into where our problem area is. Our problem area seems to be the middle school. And we need, and that's, when you lump the gains of the elementary school with the middle school, it dilutes the problem in the middle school. We want the truth. Whether it's pretty or not, we want it. We want to see what we can do about it. I put before you a letter that some concerns I have, and I'm going to read it for the record. As a former science teacher, I trust that data gives me valuable information on which to base conclusions and recommendations. This detailed SBAC report leads me to conclude we are not improving instruction enough to see significant growth in both ELA and math scores, but are actually falling behind on a grade-by-grade analysis. We see a decline in ELA achievement, see pages 7, 12, and 15, for grades 4, 7, and 10, and in math for grades 5 and 7, and a decline in ELA growth, see page 8 to 13, for grades 3 to 5 and 4 to 6, with only slight gains in grades 5 to 7 and 6 to 8, and declines in math growth in grades 3 through 5, 4 to 6, and 5 to 7. And I'd like to see what are for the high schools, 8, 9, 10, maybe math scores. I know you can't do SAT, but it would be nice when you give us more details if we can somehow track those 8th graders as they go on to the high school. We also have a significant amount of students not meeting or exceeding the standards in both ELA and math. On page 5 and 10, you see the grade level breakdowns for the percent of students achieving level 3 and 4 in ELA and math. Although we have now outscored the state averages, we still have an unacceptable 38 to 56% of our students below the test standards. In grades 4, 6, and 7, and 8 for ELA, page 5, and in grades 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 in math, page 10, we are consistently below 70% and 60% respectively, with a low of 44.3% in grade 7, only 0.2% above the state average. The complete story is found in Appendix C, page 25 to 27, and is not encouraging, especially for middle school ELA and math. This data has shown some improvements since we have been discussing the SBAC scores over the years, but it tells me we need more administrative, principals, assistant principals, and SPED directors oversight of a daily lesson development, curriculum follow-through, data analysis, evaluation, PLCs, computer overuse, MobiMax and Khan Academy, and the test proctoring, especially in the middle school. Not just test proctoring, but test preparation. The next steps in curriculum and instructions, page 17 to 19, should aim for high yield, affordable, sustainable, and measurable interventions throughout the district and in each school. More frequent, regularly defined analysis, reporting, and dissemination of data should be a part of the instructional process, and the whole school should have the same focus in every classroom, from PE to foreign language to core disciplines. I note that you only are doing the deep dives in the core disciplines. Everybody should be getting the data. Everybody should be analyzing. That student goes from one class to another, and you can do a garden lesson that incorporates math or language arts. You can do a PE lesson that includes that. And I really strongly feel every teacher should be working on those goals. Every staff member cares about the education of our children, but we have to go about it in a concise and effective way with continual and regular reinforcement and discussion throughout the year with our administrative staff leading the way. One staff meeting in the beginning of the year is not going to cut it.
Thank you for your comments. I think, I think some of the takeaways are, these are the highest scores in district history. We have 160 kids more than we did 3 years ago meeting goal in math. Granted, looking at it in the aggregate, but the fact of the matter is we do have 160 more kids meeting goal in math than we did 3 test administrations ago. There are pockets that are concerning. There are grade level seesawing, as we said. But it's hard to negate the fact that we have 160 more kids meeting goal in math. Language arts continues to be relatively flat, approaching the 70% mark. I think the emphasis on data is spot on. I mean, we developed a 5-year strategic plan with a focus on data. In last year's budget, the board supported the purchase of a data warehouse. The kickoff was yesterday, which you sat in on with Ed yesterday. And I think what you're seeing is a consistent use of data from the administrative level to the district data team. We now have what's called school leadership teams in each building. You're going to hear more about that next month when we present school growth plans. Every school has a school growth plan guiding the work of PLCs. Every teacher is involved in the data. It's not a one-stop shop anymore. We are utilizing this data on a monthly and a weekly basis. I was in a PE class in Mr. Discordia's school a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know if it was pronouns or adverbs. It was one of those things. Kids were doing something in gym around pronouns. So it is the responsibility. We're all teachers of reading, writing, and math. So, I think as we look at cohorts in specific grade levels, we do see some seesawing. But we do have more kids at goal than ever before, and I want to emphasize that with the hard work of our staff, for sure. I agree with some of the sentiments you expressed with the direction we need to head, and those are clearly articulated in our strategic plan. And you're going to see a little bit. I'm going to talk about the strategic plan in just a moment and see some of that embedded in there.
First Amanda and then Jody.
So I think also in looking at this is a picture that we don't see because we want to see data. We don't want to see the other aspect, which is because I proctor these tests and I'm in the trenches and I see the kids who are they're testing fatigue. We've sat down the results and looked at these tests, and you have to be able to move the page up and down and then move it sideways and then find the match. It's very tedious and very cumbersome, just the program itself. I've seen some of my best students almost in tears. Even my own children, they're like, I have to go back to school and finish my, and I'm like, this is like days. She's like, well, I have to get everything right, and I have to, the stress and it's sad to say because I get it, we want to know where everybody's at, but when I look at my students who are super high achievers, and I look at the map for SBAC scores they get, they're not in direct correlation all the time with what they're actually achieving in the classroom. And I know my daughters who were at Clark Lane, they did come home and tell me they were doing math problems in PE, and they were having ELA woven into it, and I was like, well, how did they do it? What did they do? And they would tell me that, but I can tell you it's almost painful watching some of these students have to go through the testing. And I know it doesn't help anything as far as looking at the scores. They are what they are, and I get that, but I think it's sad because it's not always an exact representation of what they're actually doing in the classroom and how hard the teachers are working. And that's just my humble opinion coming from someone who's actually in it, because I've watched these kids literally, some of them are in tears. I can't do it anymore, I can't move this up and down, I can't, how do Mysteries help me with this, help me with that, and you can only help them with so much. And some of them get readers, some of them don't get there's just so many components that go into it. I have some special ed kids who, they have to take it, and I'm not trying to give them a disservice, but their scores kind of skew the other scores to a point, so I almost wish they could make it more user-friendly for the kids to show what they're really capable of achieving, because I see the disconnect between what they're actually doing in class and how well they do I just can't take any more, okay, I'm just going to answer that, okay, I'm just moving on. And I'm like, don't just try to slow down. And they're like, I can't do it anymore. So I wish the state or whoever comes up with all these things would look into that aspect of it too, because I see kids that work so hard in class, and they come to these tests and they're already a nervous wreck about it, and these reports that you send look less complicated than what the kids are trying to do on the outside half the time. It's bad. So that's just my 5 cents worth of being somebody who's in it. So.
But it's the same situation in all 169 towns in Connecticut.
I
agree with you. The SBAC test is terrible, but it's what Connecticut has.
I know, it's bad.
But what I'm saying is, so comparatively, it's the same everywhere.
Jody.
I was just going to say, I hate judging any school district on one stupid test. I think our kids are much more than this SBAC test, and I was going to piggyback on what Amanda said. We're getting our kids so uptight about this one test, and the teachers are trying so hard, the administration's trying so hard, but we're judging our school system and all the school systems on one test. And I've never agreed with it.
Yeah.
Not one test, it's several days of testing. But students are practicing on these tests. You're taking MAP. So actually, I think it's more of a fair basis now than the CMTs used to be, because it's also measuring target growth. So for each child, there's not a magic number where all of a sudden they're getting over a goal line. Every student has their own goal line. So I think it's a much better way of measuring student progress. I think we've come a long way. I have some questions. On the MAP scores, have we checked to see if they're good predictors of how our students are doing? Yeah, there is a good prediction.
Died last year, and there's a very strong
correlation. Okay.
SBAC and MAP, and so MAP, or measures of progress, is our universal screen that we administer 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring. And as we look back, the spring MAP and the SBAC pretty much spot on.
Okay, good.
And so that means that the expected target of growth that MAP can give in the fall is really the target of growth that we expect kids to improve on SBAC. And the nice thing with MAP, it gives us a little more guidance as to how to get there, with a little deeper dive under play with like in this area, and in MAP with like this area, where the SBAC is just really an initial impression of ELA or of MAP. So by using the two in concert, as you said, you think that it's focusing us. And every elementary school this year has really had a faculty meeting, either faculty or full PLC, dedicated to a deep understanding of two of the MAP reports, so that every teacher is really using those now to drive instruction.
Like under the claims and all those, there's a lot more data on them.
There's actually not. So
they stopped that.
SBAC did away with the claims reporting, so we have no data now.
You'll note
It's a blanket.
It's just a blanket number?
It's just.
we're not part on EdSite Public or EdSite Secure this year.
They did away with the
That's
claims
ridiculous.
reporting. Because you might recall we included that last year.
Yeah. So this year you didn't get that data.
We can see it for an individual kid. So when we look at like the report that is on that kid that's going to go home, there's a little more in-depth information, but we can't look at a grade level and say, oh, this grade level really struggled with ratios, proportions, and fractions. So we're not getting any item analysis anymore. We're not getting any claims data. Which really...
I take it back that SBAC was a great test.
No, but it really...
Because it used to have a lot of information with it.
Yeah.
That's purposely why I had to retool the report than last year, because when I didn't see it, I called the State Department, Bureau of Assessment, and they just said that information is no longer available on that site. And so
The only way we could do it is to get it all ourselves.
student by student. And
Yeah.
You can't do that.
Give it to every association.
So it really heightens the usefulness of MAP, right?
Yeah.
Because now that is really our guidebook.
Right. So it breaks down lexile level and everything. I mean, it literally
It
breaks down
doesn't have
everything.
any of that.
No.
SBAC anymore. Oh my goodness. How much are we paying for this?
I really have given you all the information that we garnered out of the EdSite Secure site, which is the SBAC site.
Well, that answered a lot of my questions about where we needed to. Since you don't have that information, I can't answer those
The
questions.
teachers are doing that analysis, so if teacher Discordia has his 23 kids, he's doing that book.
He can look at their sheets, because he's only doing for 23.
Chris, I don't know if you want to touch upon that, or Billy too.
Their previous year's kids, and then we, for grade 4 and 5,
Right.
give them the kids that are coming to them with the breakdown. And then they look at those in PLC. So they actually can do it, it's easier to do with 20 than, with 380. So they're using that, and they're using the printouts from MAP, which gives you like 4 key areas, and it tells you which areas are relative strength to them and a relative weakness, so they can group them based on that too. So there's more information you can get from them.
What becomes impossible with SBAC is looking at it at the macro level, at the district level, and say, oh, this is the problem at grade 7, or this is the problem at grade 4. We're missing a unit on this. That becomes really difficult,
Those puzzle pieces aren't
which is why mapping is really important.
Okay.
Really important. It's great questions.
Other questions or comments?
Thank you, Craig. This was... I enjoyed reading every page.
Yeah, and I think...
I like this kind of stuff. I loved reading it. I was a little bit worried about the scores not being where, but we kind of knew that this summer, so...
If there's any suggestions on how to make
Yeah,
a more usable report.
Yeah, I agree with Marcia. I don't know what the value is of grouping 3 through 8 just to get a metric. I know you need a number to compare.
That's what the papers report.
That's what they're doing?
That's what the papers report. The 3 through 8 aggregate, which is why
you did.
We include it.
Okay.
I agree. Its usefulness in saying, oh, this is a high point, or I mean, what it does tell you as a district is, do you have more kids learning than you did yesterday? I mean, that's what it does tell you. But it doesn't really pinpoint strengths and weaknesses.
Right. Like you said, you have 120 more kids, 160 more kids. Like, what grades are they in? Are they all over?
Right. How many are new,
Right.
how many are new to the district,
Yeah.
how many are not?
Yeah.
Because they're in 3 through 8.
Right, are we really,
We don't know what grades in it.
yeah, I mean, so that analysis taking place at the school level,
Okay.
of course. And you can see kind of over cohort trends, where that lies.
Thank you very much.
Just wanted to spend, I'm not done yet. Almost. We're done with SBAC, but I just wanted to remind the board of our strategic plan work for 18-19. Yeah.
That's what we're moving.
Oh, okay. I thought you were
No.
playing me off as your There we go. But you'll see some of the work is closely aligned with many of the comments Craig said here. This is information I reviewed with the entire district at convocation for those of you who attended. We have 5 areas in our strategic plan that we have goals in. The first area is communication and alignment. And really, in the alignment piece, one of the goals of that team this year is to really identify preliminary data sources to monitor progress on district goals and district progress. So obviously SBAC is in the forefront tonight. What other metrics as a district do we feel are important in our indicators of are we continuing to progress? The most obvious ones are math and SBAC. But if you look at other metrics, such as the number of kids taking college credit-bearing courses at the high school, which is over 600 now, is that a metric that's important to us? So those are the types of discussions that team will have this year. We're working on defining the attributes of a successful graduate. Some of those are embedded in our academic skills that were part of the strategic plan. That's a big lift for the high school with NEASC accreditation and Great Schools Partnership work this year. And really working with higher education and the Eastern Connecticut Chamber of Commerce around our high schoolers. And there'll be more on that in the future in terms of some work we're doing with the Eastern Workforce Alliance. The other area of the strategic plan we'll be working on this year is really identifying our priority hot skills. I have hot in quotation marks. Obviously that stands for higher order thinking skills. That's really a brand name like Kleenex. It's whether we end up with depth of knowledge, blooms, whatever that is, but really what are our priority hot skills that we want to identify and emphasize pre-K to 12. Assessment, which is obviously timely for tonight. Really, we're going to do some analysis of our existing rubrics in the district. Development of rubrics for academic expectations that do not yet have them. We're going to finalize our district assessment plan, which is currently 22 pages, so we need to get that down to a readable format. And then, as Craig mentioned, really using protocols at the PLC level to look at data and student work, which has gone on for a long time in pockets, and it's really about systemizing it to make sure the expectations for every PLC are the same. So,
Tom, you don't want to put in your just the data warehouse as one of those steps in there, because that's going to be a lot of your work this year.
It will be. There was a defined goal in last year's strategic plan to pick a data warehouse. Will be closely aligned with district assessment plan. Yes, that work it will go on and is
that's a big piece, and you got it done.
Huge.
Yeah,
and that's really going to transform the work of PLCs down the road. SEL really continuing the things that we're doing. You heard about Second Step last year. Actually, a group from Oswegatchie is presenting to my parents' liaison council tomorrow morning on Second Step. Jody, I think you'll be there.
Yeah.
Really looking at that realm and continuing to make sure our families really know what's available. Policy committee members, you're not left out. We're really going to look at, are there policy barriers to implementation of really what we want to do as a district in terms of our mission and our strategic plan. So we happen to have a bring your own device policy here in Waterford, but some districts might have a policy that says no students can log on to the district network with a personal device. So that would be a barrier, policy barrier. We don't have that, but I'm using that as an example. So we're going to do a deep dive of all of our policies to see is there anything getting in the way of allowing us to progress as a district, and looking at revisions. The graduation requirements policy will be something that will be looked at as part of that. And really being mindful as the policy committee of the board develops new policy, making sure it is in alignment with our district mission and vision. That is a very high-level overview. The plan is much more in-depth, and again, obviously for the public, that's found on our website. I wanted to share a graphic with you tonight that I shared with all staff at Convocation. The phrase "connecting the dots" was a consistent theme at Convocation and has been a consistent theme pretty much in every meeting and location. I think my team can attest to that I often rejuvenate that phrase when we're talking about the work we're doing. They kind of chuckle when I bring it up in meetings. They're all nodding. But I really wanted to, for the whole district staff at Convocation, really connect those dots. So we talked about there's a district mission and beliefs, and those are posted prominently throughout the districts. And really the mission and the beliefs really should lead us towards student growth and achievement. That mission and beliefs really should drive and do drive our Board of Ed goals and our strategic plan. And then you begin to layer in, how does that affect the teaching and learning in the classroom? You heard some of that tonight through the presentation Craig gave. That's really at the heart of what we do. Solid teaching and learning is going to lead to student growth and achievement. So we talked about how are we monitoring that teaching and learning? How are we monitoring the data that comes from that? It's really through our district data team, which we call our district analysis and action team. The work of that team is really going to drive and is driving the work of our school leadership teams. And we had different teams and committees at all different schools, but it's really unifying their purpose and their mission. And it looks slightly different. At the high school, that's going to be your department chairs team. At the middle school, that's going to be your curriculum leaders team. At the elementary level, those are going to be grade level representative teams. That school leadership team at the school level is going to really be responsible for implementing and monitoring and assessing the school growth plan, which you'll hear about next month at the November board meeting. That is a lengthy, big document, so it won't be we'll make sure we give you access to school growth plans, but the overview we give will be a representative sample of that. School growth plans really drive the work of our PLCs and individual teacher goals, and that should bend the cycle and really inform the work of the district and analysis and action team. And that's really, I think, our principals can attest, really has helped connect the dots for our staff and really understand that how the mission and beliefs, our board goals, strategic plan really drive the work all the way down to the individual classroom level. And you see the faces of our smiling students who enjoy coming here each day. So I thought I'd share that with you. It really brought into focus all that we are doing. I'm almost done. I want to thank Clark Lane for their artwork, both here in the board conference room as well as the hallway. Always like to highlight the great work that our students are doing. I want to commend the district. You've seen me mention on numerous occasions that Great Neck, Clark Lane, and Waterford High hosted educators from around the world who are at Foxwoods for the International Dyslexia Conference. We were chosen as a host site. We were the only K-12 or pre-K-12 public school district that had that honor. There were 2 private schools and a university where people visited, but we had educators from all over the world. I know at the high school where I helped Allison Moser host folks, I was talking to a woman from Brazil. So it was quite remarkable that she came here to Waterford High as part of the conference. And it really looked at our reading instruction and reading intervention you'll see more from Kathy Ballone, who's at the conference, in Friday Note tomorrow. We are featured on a national publication. I think you might have seen that in Friday Note, and if not, we'll send that forward. We were the feature article and on the cover of that Wilson Reading Journal. So really pleased with Kathy Ballone and Jeannie Morgan at Clark Lane, who are really driving that work. We now have 11 teachers district-wide trained in this intensive reading intervention program, Wilson Reading, which is a hefty financial investment, but it's really paying dividends with students struggling to read. Our Teacher Leadership Academy, Cohort 3, launched last week. Really pleased. 16 teachers. 14 engaged, really targeted professional development in teacher leaders. You can see with structures like district data teams, leadership teams, we need teachers to really be a part of that process. See Mr. Adler nodding affirmatively. We are finalizing plans for our November 6th PD Day. You have some plans at your places. Craig, want to just touch on a few highlights?
Sure. Elementary is going to be doing a deep dive in elementary science with the rollout of one of the 3 units that our science team has been working on. Annual review of CDSS. Middle school and high school, we're going to continue to work with grade school partnership at the middle school. It's kind of, again, working towards standard-based grading as you continue write-up. And then at the high school, it's continuing on the path of mastery-based learning. The high school also has another heavy lift of their self-study with NEAP. So in addition to those listed, we have a paraprofessional district-wide getting trained with PMT, how to handle children correctly, and we have someone coming in from Child and Family kind of giving professional development for all the paraprofessionals, and then we have Lieutenant Burton coming in to give an overview of school security and safety to all of our paraprofessionals as well, and how they can be part of the system. We are hosting several of the regional PDs in the area, professional development, and you can see that this
It's a big, important day, so in many regards. Veterans Day programs are planning are underway. I know I'll be attending Quaker Hill and Oswegatchie. Thank you for staggering those so I can go to more than one this year. Parent-teacher conferences will be held on Monday, November 12th. Looking forward to a good turnout. A few weeks ago at Clark Lane, you've heard Mr. Sachs and others talk about the Wingman program. Wingman was kicked off this year with Mr. Ian Hockley, who lost a son in Sandy Hook. He's the founder of Wingman. He was on site to kick that off with our students. And it's really about creating an atmosphere where kids are looking out for each other and really really being mindful of social inclusion and really reducing that social isolation. Mr. Hockley wanted to be here tonight to talk to you about the good work going on with Wingman. He couldn't, he's in another part of the country, but he did send a video and he insisted I play it. It's a short video, but this is the founder of Wingman, Ian Hockley, who was on hand at Clark Lane.
My name is Steve. Say hello to everybody at Waterford. I'm very sorry I can't be there. This message is really to thank this staff, all his staff, and the wonderful students at Clark Lane Middle School for everything they've done in this program. Even though they've only been in this program a few years, they've done some very amazing and unique things and really put their stamp on the program. But it's designed to be there. It's designed to be run by the students and for a whole school experience and for them to really make it their own. And I think you'll see from just some of the pictures I've been able to put together here in this little bit, they really have done just that. And we hope they're with us for many more years to come.
It's been a really nice piece at the middle school. Moving on, many of our high school sport teams are entering conference tournament play. Wish them all during this home stretch, as some of them will be involved with state tournament play, I'm sure. High school drama, Steel Magnolias production kicks off this weekend, Mr. Hauser?
Started 15 minutes ago.
There you go. From what I hear, ticket sales have been through the roof. So.
Yeah, there are still some available if you want to go, but they're going back.
Excellent. You might notice that Mr. Macrino is not here tonight. He's not playing hooky. He is receiving his Assistant Principal of the Year award from CAS. That's an award that is given last year but received tonight. So he was very touched that, even though it was an award that he got for his work in a previous district, many of the staff from Oswegatchie made the trip this evening, so as well as folks from his previous district. So he's there tonight receiving that award. I'll remind the board and the public, our next Board of Ed meeting is Tuesday, November 13th, which is not the usual fourth Thursday, primarily because of the Thanksgiving holiday and the Caves Cats Convention, which is on Thursday the 15th. If any board member wishes to attend Cave Cats, you can see Caroline after the meeting, or you can email her and she'll take care of you for that. And Mr. Chair, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions or comments from the board for Tom? Okay. Committee reports. Let's start with the committee looking at the girls' softball field improvement on new field potential. Jody or Craig?
Craig, you can go ahead.
We had our second meeting for the committee. Essentially, it's a feasibility committee where we're trying to find a location and possible location for a girls' softball field, and then seeing what makes sense and seeing what the cost might be. There's been some discussion mostly about that field. There's a proposal to really revamp that and make it into something quite special. Whether we get there or not, I don't know. But we're going to have another meeting as well. The command team came up with some ideas to pack that as practice field. Well, there's some possibilities there. So that's still got to be investigated. But they've been good meetings. We've been going through the whole process of due diligence of really looking into the possibilities of what makes sense and what doesn't, and what's best for the girls' softball program.
By the practice field, is that what you're referring to in the minutes as the town property behind the Friendship School?
No.
So
The Cave Nursery?
So there is, town owns a piece of property out behind Friendship School that wraps around the back of the football field and around the back of the boys' baseball field. It's wooded right now.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Between the end of our field and the train track.
Right.
And the train track's butt up against a Defender Industry.
Right.
So
that's one piece. And then the other is by the practice field, you said?
Down Minor Lane.
Down Minor.
So there's some talk.
Their practice
Where soccer is?
Exactly, where the practice soccer fields are.
We had looked at taking part of that to the practice field, but that just it impacts too much.
Okay.
We also looked at where the buses are currently parked as an option, but there's a big cost savings for us for having the buses there, and that also impacts other possibly track and field and other things. So we've gone through this whole process of having spreadsheets there,
Plus and benefits. Yeah. I was just looking for location. I didn't understand.
Are any of them wetlands? Aren't there a lot of wet, swampy areas back there?
No, that's actually, I think, from what I understand, it's actually buildable.
Oh, good.
Soccer was pretty wet at one time. I think they put in a lot of stuff to drain.
And that's part of this too, is that if any of this is done, that the proper site work will be done for drainage and whatnot. So I think our goal is to find a location and make a recommendation, and then we could come up with some numbers.
Money.
Yeah.
Are they looking, I remember the original presentation, they were talking about doing it now, today. What's our time frame?
It just isn't gonna happen now because of the way that the money isn't freed up until July anyway, for this current budget cycle, so.
Yeah, I don't think they understand.
It's not gonna happen for spring of 2019, is that?
There's some possibilities presented, but whether or not that's realistic or not, but, you know, as far as town money goes, that stuff doesn't freed up until.
Right, you have to plan it, yeah.
Yeah, we have to go to capital improvement.
Right.
Yeah.
Whether or not you have some contingencies or other things to cover that, I don't know if that's possible or whatever, but I mean, if you look at it just straight up, you know, sure.
What we, no, I was just gonna say, what we plan to is, for this coming season is, some things really need to be done at VET for the girls.
Even for on a temporary basis.
I'm sorry,
Right.
it's not the best right now. So we'd have to work with Rec and Parks with that. But, I mean, I'm hoping down the road we can use that area and let the girls have a nice softball field like the boys have a nice baseball field.
Mm-hmm.
And then Joy has some great ideas for other things we could do with that property. You have a nature trail and other things, so it's not just softball. The town, the whole town can use it. We could use it educationally for our kids. And I'm glad we're taking our time. I mean, I wanted a field right away. I really did. But we could fix that for now, and then down the road have a really top-notch girls softball field, but also use it for other things in town. Right.
And I think that was the point. I think that's what Greg was brought up to me too. I think long-term, that's probably the best strategy.
Right.
To do something here to make this better.
Well, safer. Just safer.
Yeah, to make it a better facility overall, not only do we benefit the school, but the town benefits from that too. So,
That's right.
you know, but like Greg pointed out, I think the long-term solution might be down behind and that benefits not just softball, but everybody, all programs.
And we have a really nice group of people, I think, on our committee too. So. We'll get something.
Thank you, Craig and Jody. Marcia, Policy Committee update.
Yes, we have been reviewing the fundraising policy, 1324, for almost a year now. We were looking at it because of concerns of overburdening students and families, peer pressure, and accountability of the money. We feel the new policy addresses those concerns with the principal of NAGI and superintendent's tracking and approval of the fundraising and detailed request form and reporting form. Thank you. Hopefully we'll facilitate those issues. The other policies that we looked at are all basically 1101, 4112.4, non-discrimination, employment checks, and plans for minority staff recruitment are all state mandates that we need to update.
Thank you, Marcia. Other committee reports. Craig.
Not really committee, but several attended the Martin Luther King Trust Fund Scholarship Dinner. That was great. This is my third time. And there was a bunch of us. They won a lot of student gotten awards. And it's really a great thing.
Thank you.
Amazing kids.
Amazing kids.
Definitely.
Any other committee reports? Jody.
I have a Youth Service Bureau report. It's really short tonight. We're getting geared up for Thanksgiving and Christmas, reaching out into the community. And I just have some flyers just letting everybody know what they plan on doing and if you want to help, how you can help. Right now also we're going to start interviewing for a new program coordinator because Krista has left. So Danny's short-handed right now, so we're all trying to chip in help for what we can. But and the food locker is working out beautifully, having their Youth Service Bureau. They've gotten a lot of requests, but I think people feel more comfortable going there. They can go there on weekends also to pick things up, and then it's not at the front steps of Town Hall. You know, they have more privacy going there. But they're going to do Stuff the Bus again, and Tom's letting us do that. That's going to be the 8th, I think. It's a Thursday, 2 days after voting day. So that should be fun. All the schools are involved with that, and they do a great job. We have wonderful kids in Waterford. I think that's it. Oh, and they've been helping out at our home, youth restorators are helping me out at our home football games. Danny and Megan and Eileen have been helping me in the concession stand. I want to thank Jay for getting heat in there. We're not freezing this year. And we only have 2 more home games on the 2nd and 9th. And then also we're hosting the Thanksgiving Day game this year against East Lyme. So that should be a lot of fun. Yeah, it'll be fun. I guess that's it, Greg. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Okay, I don't think there are any other committee reports, so we'll move on to new business. Discussion and possible action on the ED 099 agreement for a child nutrition program. Tom.
Pretty straightforward. It's we want to continue to receive federal funds. We ought to approve this. Joe, anything other than that?
Could I have a motion then?
So moved.
Amanda? Okay. All those in favor of approving this?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved unanimously. Next item, discussion and possible action concerning a food service program evaluation. Tom.
Sure. We've had several discussions here about the financial stability of the food service program. The fund balance certainly has gone down in recent years due to some year-over-year deficits. We've taken some actions. I think Joe and I have shared those at a previous meeting. But this would really be bringing in an expert to look at the entire operation, from how we're buying, to our menus, to are we staffed appropriately, could we benefit from doing something more regionally. It's really going to look at it, as I would say, food service, soup to nuts, really. Joe?
No, fair enough. So this proposal that we have before us is going to be done by CREC, the learn of the Hartford region. They charge about $1,000 a day. They did an evaluation of another school district in the state, which was fortunate enough to share the results of that. We're impressed by them. That was CREC. I'd like to have it here, and let's see what the evaluation is.
How many days do you think it's going to take?
10 working days. I think that's about that long.
And they won't exceed the 10,000, right?
Correct.
Sure. Right.
Especially municipalities, when you issue purchase orders, you typically don't go over.
Right.
Any further questions? And perhaps the motion is suggested, but with the proviso that the contract not exceed 10,000.
Oh, that's a good.
I'd
like to make a move that the Board of Ed approves the contract with Correct Food Services for our program evaluation not to exceed $10,000.
Is there a second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, next item is possible action after discussion on an IT shared services addendum. Tom.
Sure. While there's no new cost to the Board of Education, I did want to bring this forward. We are IT is a shared service between the Board of Ed and the town of Waterford. It is a shared service that works extremely well. It is a Board of Ed department that services the town departments. The technological needs in the police world have increased exponentially in recent years with archival of video footage, just even the equipment in cruisers now. It's a whole different world. And we're not currently staffed correctly or at the right size to really meet the demands of the police department. We have done and continue to do, and the chief is very complimentary, how much time we've been able to give him, but it's not enough. So he is proposing at his cost to increase staffing in the IT department by another full-time employee that would be fully funded by the police department. The reason I bring it to the board is because in our budget book it will be reflected as an increase in the department. And I did not want to bring that forward. Did not want to do that without bringing that forward.
There's no way to put it in his budget?
It's a Board of Ed department. There's no really way to show it on his books unless we made it a town employee, but then you have a town employee reporting to a Board of Ed IT director, and I think it gets muddled. One of the things Ed Crane has really worked hard on is really commingling them with systems in a very positive way, that our system backs up to their system backs up to our system, and all of those types of things. So that was discussed. We just make it a police department employee, but it gets complicated.
So in terms of budget, we get that, but how will there be a transfer?
So net, the budget's going to show a 0.
Okay.
But you're going to see an FTE increase.
Okay.
Okay, got it.
And legal counsel is coming up with an MOU that would basically say the existing shared service agreement is intact, and the police department agrees to fully fund a 1.0 employee, and if they cut funding, the employee goes.
Okay.
All bets are off. So that would be the agreement.
Okay.
I don't have any concerns with that arrangement if the board is...
Will it be in this year's budget? Like,
we would hire that
do?
person right now in this fiscal year. He has the funding.
Get the money.
So.
Any other questions? If not, could we have the recommended motion read and made? Someone? Jody.
Okay, I'd like to make the motion that the Waterford Board of Education approves the hire of an additional employee in the IT department dedicated solely to the Waterford Police Department and authorizes an addendum to the existing IT shared service agreement.
Second, Amanda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Tom, the budget meeting timeline and schedule. Go ahead.
Yep. We're at that time of year. We get a brief break in July and August and a little bit into September, and we're right back in budget. But your timeline is there. It's a very similar timeline to previous years. We've already started internal work. Mr. Mancini rolled that out at the last ad team meeting to our principals, so that development's beginning already at the school level. Items are due to him end of November, and then we really engage in the central office process in consultation with directors and principals to present to you a recommended budget. One slight change from previous years, after some discussion with Mr. Fedor, Chair of Board of Finance, is because our normal February Board of Ed meeting is the last day of February, he would not be getting our approved budget until March. He needs a little more time. Town budgets are due like mid-December, so they're very gracious in extending the timeline to us. So this calendar puts the February board meeting with budget approval on February 21st, so we can get them the budget about a month ahead. And he would very much appreciate that. That correspondence has already gone out. But very similar process with the workshops again in February. Going to really make a hard push to get as many town officials at those budget workshops as we can, so folks are as informed as they possibly can be. It's not an action item, but...
With the February 21st meeting, of course that would be a special meeting, but is it your plan to also then cancel the regular meeting on the 28th?
That would be our normal February meeting, yes. That will be...
So you're going to change that?
Yes, and we actually haven't set 2019 dates yet, so we'll set that. We'll do that at next month's board meeting. So that will be our normally regularly scheduled February meeting.
It won't be a special meeting.
So there won't be 4 meetings in February. Just it's a heavy.
That doesn't seem like the best day.
Well,
seriously.
we could move that to the Wednesday. Typically, we've done that 2 weeks in a row.
I kind of like the shelter that day.
Day for some of us.
We can absolutely move that to Wednesday the 13th. That's not an issue at all. I don't think anybody wants to be here on a Friday night, so we'll shoot for the Wednesday. Not a problem.
Tom, an update on the K-8 recruitment.
Sure, again, not an action item, just an update item at this time. You might recall at the September board meeting, the board approved a motion to authorize me to contact the 7 K-8 districts in eastern Connecticut and gauge their interest in having further discussions around the possibility of sending their 8th graders on a limited basis to Waterford High. I've talked with or met with all 7 towns at this time. The initial conversation has really been, quote, are you interested in exploring this further? Does this pique your interest and want to have those discussions? 3 districts have given me a firm yes that they want to have further discussions. I received 2 no's for a variety of reasons. None had to do with the quality of the education we provide. All have been very complimentary, in a very positive way. And I have 2 districts who have given me a maybe and still waiting, further discussion with them whether or not it's going to be a fit. At the November board meeting, I will likely ask the board at that time for authorization to potentially present to area boards of ed for those towns that are interested. Before I would do that, at the same meeting we would want to set a tuition rate because they're going to want to know what they would be paying as well as special ed costs, which are currently codified in policy for tuition paying students. So that's the latest update. There's at least 3 districts interested in exploring it further. It could be upwards of 5, but we'll see how that plays out, and I'll know more at the November meeting, and potentially again asking the board for authorization to approach them in a more formal basis, and probably drag Mr. Hauser with me. Safer for me to say that at a public meeting. So.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Amanda.
Lime Old Lime is very vigorous about doing something similar. Just because these people say no right now, the door would still be open if they so chose, or is that not how it works?
So, in my view, yes, the door is always open, but that's ultimately a board decision. Okay. But a town would have to sign an agreement with this Board of Ed to make it either what's called a designated high school, which means they transport, this is where our kids go, or an approved high school, which says a K-town would not be required to transport, but they might have a parent who works in Waterford, and you know what, if you can get them there,
great.
Great. So, to me, the door would not be closed on any of these towns, but ultimately, that would be a board decision. Again, not an action item, more of an update. Happy to answer any other questions.
Board, any other questions? Okay, we're on to policy. Craig, we have some essentially mandated changes.
Correct. And Martha correctly captured that. So the first one is your non-discrimination policy, 101. The 1101, the policy and regulations were revised to remove the references to genetic information under the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act of 2008, as this only applies to employers and their employees. So, do you want me to read all 3?
Right, I think we can approve all 3 in one motion. So.
Yeah.
Then the next one was on employment checks, which is policy 4112.5. This policy has been revised to address the new statutory changes that have exceptions to the application and background checks for certain employees of adult ed programs. And albeit minor, the policy 411.3, the same for minority staff recruitment, really the statutory references had changed over the law. So those are the changes to those policies. If there's any questions.
Board, any questions for Mr. Powers? Okay. Could I then have a motion to approve all 3 policies?
I move that the Waterford Board of Education approves and adopts policy 1101, non-discrimination, policy 4112.5/42 12.5, employment checks, certified and non-certified, and policy 4111.3, clearance for minority staff recruitment as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Joy? Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Craig, you have a report for us on fundraising, that regulation.
As I referred to before, after much discussion at the policy committee, the policy itself hasn't changed, but the details of the policy and how it's regulated has. So the regulations now include, as Marcia said in her report, a little more information about what we're collecting in our activity report for approval, and we're following up with adding a post-activity report so that we can get more data on how the fundraisers went.
Great idea.
And then, as the board note on letter B of our regulations, we also really now have codified some ruling around the whole notion of crowdfunding, whether it be the GoFundMe or DonorChoose, where this was kind of unregulated until now, where now we basically are asking for the employee to put us on notice of what's being asked for and how it's going to be used in instruction.
Thank you, Craig. And also, the administration is going to look at the parent survey and draft several questions for the parents to try to get a feel for whether or not the community feels that we're asking too much of them, that they're being overburdened by fundraising efforts. So we'll get some good feedback on that next year.
Question on that. So the director of student activities is approving all funding now, K through 12, not just high school? On this form,
Yes. So
it all goes to Chris, even if it was a kindergarten?
No, principals.
Okay, so did I read this wrong?
I think it would be location dependent if it has to do perhaps with middle school, high school.
6 through 12, I see it.
Exactly.
But they didn't have a principal signature down here. That's the only reason I asked.
Oh, and it's other.
You know, for that one,
Form 1, yeah.
we certainly want that.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Well, it might be on a different, it might have just gotten cut off.
I was going to say, maybe I thought it was on there before.
I see it on
the one that's stapled.
1, 2, 3, 4, 4,
But I only had one.
Second one back.
It's a double-sided.
Superintendent.
So on the one at your table, we added just a follow-up date report, and I think that information just fell off the page.
Okay, no
Because the
problem.
line went down to the...
No problemo.
Any other questions?
I didn't get any paper. I didn't get any. You got paper? No.
Is it the pleasure of the board to adjourn?
Do we need to approve this?
Oh, there it is.
As a point of clarification, because it's just an administrative regulation, there's no formal approval. If we get a change in policy, we'll get it.
Thank you.
Jody?
I just wanted to ask the board if it's okay if we research student representation on our board. That I know we've discussed it over the years, but when we were at the Martin Luther King Junior Dinner, they have. I know it's different. They have different roles in different districts.
Certainly tonight, no. I mean, that would have to be added to the agenda, and I would think we'd want to do...
No, not tonight.
Oh.
Just requesting
No, I
it to
know
go
that.
on an
I think we
agenda.
already had our agenda, but on a future board meeting.
I would think that would have to go to policy.
To be added to the agenda?
No. The whole idea of having student representatives sit on the board for participation purposes, I think that's something that we would want to refer to the policy committee before just bringing to the board as a whole.
Well, I just wanted to know how the board felt about it, because we discussed it over the years, but we never really got anywhere. And I was, well, maybe it should go through policy, I guess, I don't know, but I don't know if the board wanted to discuss it as a whole before we even sent it to policy.
I kind of view this as I would public comment, where the public doesn't know we're going to be talking about this. And so I don't want to have any semi-official action taken tonight when the public isn't advised that we might be considering this. So we could certainly put it on for discussion purposes at our next meeting and then refer to policy.
Is that okay with the, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's because,
Put it on the agenda and then we can refer to policy if we need to.
Thank you.
Okay. Getting back to that adjournment.
Getting back
Is there a second? Great, okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We're adjourned.
I will come to see you Monday at 11.